Kadeem Black-Tide Mercer ruled the Virgin Islands with silent precision, while Elias Iron Hand Varela tore through it with unstoppable force, but neither knew that Marina Saint-Clair, the elegant hotel queen, was quietly playing them both toward their own destruction. Kadeem Mercer's childhood was defined by the raw beauty and hidden dangers of the Virgin Islands. He grew up in a modest home near the docks of St. Thomas, where the scent of salt water mixed with diesel fuel and the sound of ship horns carried across the wind. His father was a fisherman who disappeared during a storm when Kadeem was only 12, leaving him to navigate life with a mother who worked 2 jobs just to keep the lights on. While other boys his age dreamed of becoming sailors or tour guides, Kadeem spent his afternoons studying the rhythms of the harbor. He knew which ships came in without proper paperwork, which cargo containers stayed unguarded for hours, and which tourists carried valuables they couldn't protect. By 16, Kadeem had already learned that information was more valuable than anything you could steal with your hands. He started small, selling tips to petty thieves about where and when to strike. When the police raided the wrong warehouses, he knew he was on to something bigger. Every deal was a lesson. Every risk a step towards something greater. His calm demeanor hid a mind that worked like the tides, quiet on the surface, unstoppable underneath. It was during those years that the nickname Black Tide first emerged. Locals whispered it when talking about sudden disappearances of goods or the unexplained loss of rival gang leaders. The name stuck because it fit perfectly, like the sea's dark waves swallowing whatever they wanted without warning. Kadeem could erase a problem so cleanly it seemed as though it had never existed. Rather than join the street gangs already clawing for power, Black Tide took a different route. He understood that open violence brought attention, and attention brought the police. He built his network using fishermen, smugglers, and corrupt dock workers who could move shipments without raising suspicion. Fishing boats disguised as tourist charters became his fleet, carrying stolen art, rare gemstones, and gold from one island to another under the cover of leisure cruises. He rewarded loyalty with generosity. Every man in his crew was paid more than they could earn anywhere else, and those who stayed faithful were protected like family. Those who betrayed him never got a second chance. Their disappearances were sudden and absolute, leaving no bodies and no evidence. Black Tide wasn't reckless. Every operation was planned to the smallest detail. He knew the schedules of harbor patrols, the blind spots of security cameras, and the weaknesses of customs officers. He invested in silence, making sure no one in his circle talked to outsiders. To the public, he was just another ambitious young man running a small charter business. To the criminal underworld, he was the rising power everyone watched carefully. The police suspected his involvement in several major thefts, but suspicion wasn't enough. Without witnesses or physical proof, they could do nothing but watch. Black Tide's face appeared in no crime scene photos, and his name was never mentioned in intercepted communication. It was as if he lived 2 separate lives, one in the sunlight smiling at tourists, and one in the shadows, orchestrating million-dollar operations. Yet, even in his calculated rise, there were cracks forming beneath the surface. Success drew envy, and envy attracted predators. A shipment of uncut diamonds vanished before reaching his hands, taken by someone bold enough to challenge him. That incident marked the first time Kadeem felt the presence of a rival who played by no rules. Though the theft didn't destroy him, it planted the seed of a dangerous future. At 25, Black Tide controlled more of the Virgin Islands smuggling routes than any other figure in recent memory. His influence stretched beyond the docks into nightclubs, casinos, and even government offices. He was respected by his allies, feared by his enemies, and invisible to the law. But in a world where power shifts like the ocean, he was about to learn that no empire, no matter how carefully built, could remain unchallenged forever. Do you want me to expand Chapter 2 to the same 600-word detail in the same style next? Elias Varela's arrival in the Virgin Islands did not make headlines. It began quietly, with a modest press release about a Venezuelan entrepreneur opening a shipping company on the outskirts of Charlotte-Amalie. His paperwork was perfect, his business front clean, and his smile charming enough to win over even the most skeptical locals. Yet beneath the polished exterior, Varela carried a history written in blood. In the criminal underworld of South America, his name was spoken with caution. He had been an enforcer for a cartel so feared that even rival gangs refused to speak of it directly. The nickname Iron Hand came from the way he dealt with opposition, swift, brutal, and final. In Venezuela, Iron Hand's career had ended in a storm of betrayal. A failed assassination attempt against him had left scars along his ribs and a deep distrust of everyone outside his inner circle. He vanished from his homeland with a small fortune and a crew of fiercely loyal men. The Virgin Islands were the perfect place to start over, a paradise on the surface, a hub for illicit trade beneath. From the moment his first cargo ship docked, his true business began. Unlike most who crept into power slowly, Iron Hand moved with boldness. He understood that fear was a faster tool than negotiation. His crew, identifiable by their silver-gloved tattoos, took over cocaine routes that had been carefully balanced between smaller gangs. They hijacked shipments in broad daylight, assaulted rival warehouses without masks, and left a single silver glove on each victim's chest as a calling card. The message was clear: resistance was not just dangerous, it was pointless. Iron Hand's methods contrasted sharply with Black Tide's precision. Where Kadeem Mercer thrived on invisibility, Elias Varela thrived on spectacle. News of his attacks traveled fast, carried on whispers in bars and warnings in alleyways. Within months he had dismantled 2 mid-level gangs entirely, their leaders found either floating in shallow waters or never seen again. At first Black Tide watched from a distance. He had faced competitors before, but Iron Hand was different. His expansion was reckless, yet it somehow worked, as if chaos itself bent to his will. Black Tide attempted to send peace offerings through intermediaries, crates of expensive liquor, untraceable firearms, and coded notes proposing a shared control of trade routes. None of them returned with an agreement, some did not return at all. Then came the night that changed the tone of their relationship forever. 3 of Black Tide's most trusted lieutenants set out to secure a valuable shipment of smuggled arms. The next morning, fishermen discovered their bodies chained together beneath the harbor pier, each one wearing a silver glove on their lifeless chest. It was more than an attack, it was a declaration. That act sent ripples through the Virgin Islands' criminal hierarchy. Small-time players scrambled to choose sides, fearing that neutrality would get them killed. Iron Hand's power was growing fast, but so was the pressure. His open displays of violence began drawing unwanted attention from law enforcement, who now patrolled the docks more aggressively than ever. Despite the risk, Iron Hand pressed forward, claiming territory inch by inch. He bribed customs officials, blackmailed police officers, and planted spies within rival crews. He viewed the Virgin Islands not as a shared market, but as a kingdom that could have only one ruler. Every week that passed brought him closer to a direct collision with Black Tide, a man he had never met in person, but knew would not surrender quietly. In the shadows of paradise, 2 empires were growing toward each other like storms on a collision course. Those who had lived long enough in the underworld understood what was coming, a war that would drench the islands in blood and leave no room for the weak. For Iron Hand, this was not just business, it was the proving ground where he intended to show that the Caribbean belonged to him alone. Do you want me to expand Chapter 3 next with the same intense 600-word detail? The year that followed became known among locals as the season of no sleep. It began with a single explosion at the West Docks, a fireball that turned a warehouse into a pile of smoking rubble. The blast was no accident. It belonged to Black Tide's retaliation, a calculated strike aimed at crippling one of Iron Hand's cocaine storage points. Within hours the city was humming with rumors, and by nightfall, Iron Hand's counterstrike had already begun. His men raided one of Black Tide's cargo yards, torching 3 fishing boats and executing the guards in full view of anyone watching. What set this conflict apart from ordinary gang rivalries was its relentlessness. The attacks came at all hours in all corners of the island. One night, bursts of automatic gunfire echoed down the narrow streets of Frenchtown. The next morning a luxury yacht went up in flames near the harbor, its owner rumored to have been laundering money for Black Tide. There was no safe zone anymore. Even tourists, once the lifeblood of the economy, began canceling trips, terrified by news reports of gunfights breaking out within sight of resorts. Black Tide fought with precision, striking where it hurt most. His crew, masked and silent, targeted Iron Hand's financial backbone. They burned stacks of imported goods before they could be sold, bribed shipping agents to redirect valuable cargo, and sabotaged fuel lines on rival vessels so they would sink quietly at sea. He preferred to weaken his enemy over time rather than risk open battles, but Iron Hand's rage refused to let the war slow down. Iron Hand thrived in chaos. His retaliation was loud, brutal, and designed to terrify not only Black Tide's crew but anyone who might consider helping him. He staged public executions of suspected traitors, leaving their bodies hanging from cranes at the port. Every silver glove left on a corpse was a reminder of who ruled through fear. While Black Tide's moves were surgical, Iron Hand's strikes were storms, tearing through entire neighborhoods without caring who was caught in the crossfire. As the months dragged on, the island's economy withered. Businesses closed, fishermen stopped working at night, and corrupt officials who once welcomed bribes now feared being associated with either side. The police presence grew heavier, but arrests meant little when witnesses refused to speak and juries were too intimidated to convict. Amid this chaos, a third figure quietly took notice of the war's potential. Marina Saint-Clair was known publicly as the elegant owner of several high-end hotels scattered across St. Thomas and St. John. She hosted charity galas, posed for photographs with politicians, and appeared to have no connection to the criminal underworld. In truth, her fortune had been built years earlier through discreet money laundering for smugglers. She had long since stepped back from the dirtier side of business, but watching Black Tide and Iron Hand tear each other apart sparked an idea. Marina began feeding carefully crafted misinformation to both sides. To Black Tide she hinted that certain warehouses loyal to him had been compromised, forcing him to abandon them. To Iron Hand she suggested that some of his lieutenants were secretly working with his rival, pushing him to purge his own ranks. Each false lead escalated the conflict further, draining resources and deepening paranoia. Her strategy was patient and deliberate. The more they fought, the weaker they became. She avoided taking sides openly, letting the bloodshed mask her quiet rise in influence. Then, in the span of a single week, both empires suffered their greatest blows. Black Tide's convoy was ambushed along the remote north shore, ending in a blaze that lit up the night sky. No body was recovered. Almost simultaneously, Iron Hand's cliffside mansion erupted in flames after a series of timed charges, reducing it to rubble. He too vanished without a trace. The war ended as abruptly as it began. The docks were quiet again, the gunfire gone, but the silence felt unnatural, as though something unseen had claimed the throne neither man could hold. Few suspected the truth, that Marina Saint-Clair was now the most powerful figure in the Virgin Islands underworld, and her reign had only just begun. Do you want me to now expand Chapter 4 into the same 600-word detailed ending so the story closes with maximum impact? Months after the sudden disappearance of both Black Tide and Iron Hand, the Virgin Islands entered a strange calm. The gunfire that had rattled the nights was gone, the harbor once again filled with the hum of fishing boats and tourist yachts. To the casual observer, it seemed the storm had passed. Yet those who lived close to the underworld sensed something different. The silence was not peace, but control. Somewhere in the shadows a new power had emerged, and its grip was stronger than any that had come before. Marina Saint-Clair wore her public mask flawlessly. In the daylight, she was still the celebrated hotel magnate, dressed in silk, her photographs gracing the society pages, always at the side of government officials during ribbon-cutting ceremony. Her charity fundraisers drew the island's elite, and no one questioned where her sudden influx of wealth had come from. Behind the scenes, however, she was no longer just a quiet businesswoman with a shady past. She had become the widow of the waves, the name whispered in fear by dock workers, smugglers, and black market traders across the Caribbean. Her takeover was bloodless in the public eye but ruthless in execution. Those loyal to Black Tide found themselves given offers they could not refuse: either work for her or disappear. The same fate awaited Iron Hand's surviving men. Some accepted, grateful for her promise of stability and better pay. Others resisted and were never seen again. Boats belonging to defiant crews were found adrift miles offshore, their decks soaked in seawater, their engines dead. No one ever discovered what had happened to those aboard. Marina's strategy differed from her predecessor. She avoided the chaos that had destroyed both men, choosing instead to consolidate her empire quietly. She controlled the smuggling routes with precision, ensuring shipments arrived on time and without interference. She invested in businesses both legitimate and illicit, from waterfront bars to offshore accounts. Her operations were so well structured that law enforcement saw nothing but clean paperwork and thriving tourism. In the criminal world, her reputation became almost mythic.
It was said she never raised her voice, never threatened directly, and never appeared at the scene of any crime, yet her will was obeyed instantly. Information flowed to her through a network of loyalists she paid handsomely, and treated with calculated respect. Her word was law not because she inspired fear through spectacle, but because she made defiance unthinkable. Still, the mystery surrounding Black Tide and Iron Hand lingered. Rumors swirled that neither man had died in the final week of the war. Some claimed Black Tide had been spotted in the Dominican Republic, under a false name. Others swore Iron Hand had fled to Venezuela, wounded but alive, waiting for the right moment to return. The most unsettling theory whispered along the docks was that both men were still alive, working in secret for the widow herself, bound by debts or threats too great to escape. Whether those stories were true didn't matter to Marina. What mattered was that the fear of their possible return only strengthened her legend. No one wanted to challenge a ruler who might have the two most dangerous men in the Caribbean working in her shadow. Under her reign, the island's underworld became disciplined and predictable. Violence was minimal, but her justice was swift and final. She expanded beyond the Virgin Islands, extending her influence to Puerto Rico, the Bahamas, and the Florida Keys. By the time law enforcement agencies across multiple countries began to suspect her involvement, her operations were so deeply hidden in legitimate commerce that dismantling them seemed impossible. The Virgin Islands had always been a place where paradise and danger coexisted, but never before had one person balanced both so perfectly. Marina Saint-Clair had not only survived the storm that consumed Black Tide and Iron Hand, she had used it to wash away every obstacle between herself and absolute control. And in the quiet waves lapping against the docks at night, those who understood the truth knew that the most dangerous gangster the islands had ever seen wasn't a man from the shadows. She was a woman in plain sight, smiling for the cameras, with an empire no one dared to challenge.